She's not dead! Don't bury her! Let me save her!
Rain began to fall the moment they lowered the golden casket into the grave, as if the heavens themselves mourned the Queen of Victoria Island. People whispered her name with reverence, Amara the billionaire CEO who built an empire from dust and dreams. Her 3 towers gleamed over the Lagos skyline like monuments to her brilliance. But now her lifeless body lay in the gleaming coffin, her face calm, serene, and beautiful even in death. The mourners were dressed in black, her board members, family, and friends, all with expressions carved from grief and disbelief. The priest's voice trembled through the microphone as he read the final rites. Cameras from news outlets flashed from a distance, trying to capture the end of a legend. Everything about the funeral screamed wealth: golden casket, imported roses, security guards in black suits, and the faint scent of luxury perfume that lingered even in the rain. But among the hundreds of well-dressed mourners, one man stood apart. His clothes were torn, his hair matted, his shoes almost falling apart. He stood at the edge of the crowd, drenched in rain, his eyes fixed on the casket as if he could see something others could not. His name was Emmanuel, a homeless man known around Victoria Island as Prophet of the Street. Some said he was mad. Some said he once had everything but lost it all. None of them knew his story. As the priest finished praying and the pallbearers prepared to lower the casket, Emmanuel suddenly stepped forward, shouting in a voice that pierced through the sound of the rain. "Stop!
She's not dead!
She's not
Don't
dead!"
bury her!
The crowd gasped. The priest froze mid-sentence.
Let me save her!
2 guards moved immediately to grab him, but he pushed forward, his voice trembling yet firm. "Don't bury her. I'm telling you, she's alive." People began murmuring. Cameras turned to him. The Okafor family's lawyer, a tall man in a black suit, barked orders to remove him from the premises. But Emmanuel dropped to his knees, pleading. "Please listen to me. I saw her eyes move. Just now. I swear it on my life. She's not gone." The billionaire's younger brother, Keen, stormed toward him. "Who are you to interrupt my sister's funeral? Take him out." Before the guards could drag him away, Emmanuel shouted again, desperation cracking his voice. "Check her pulse. For God's sake, check her pulse." That one sentence hung in the air like thunder. The priest hesitated. Then, slowly, one of the nurses who had been overseeing the ceremony, an old friend of Amara's, stepped forward. She had worked with Amara for years and couldn't ignore the plea. Kneeling beside the casket, she touched Amara's wrist gently. Her face shifted. Her hand trembled. There's something," she whispered. "What do you mean something?" Keen demanded. "She's warm," the nurse said, her voice cracking. "And her pulse, it's faint, but it's there." Chaos erupted. People screamed. Cameras began flashing wildly. The guards froze in disbelief. The nurse shouted for an ambulance. Emmanuel fell to the ground, tears mixing with the rain, murmuring, "Thank you, God, thank you." The casket lid was opened fully, and Amara's chest moved, slightly but unmistakably. Her eyelids fluttered, and a weak gasp escaped her lips. The woman everyone believed dead for 3 days was breathing. Panic turned into awe. The priest dropped his Bible. Keen staggered backward, staring as if he had seen a ghost. The billionaire who was supposed to be buried that day had just come back from the edge of death. Hours later, at St. George's Hospital, the truth began to unravel. Amara had suffered a rare medical condition, a coma so deep that even machines had struggled to detect life signs. The doctors who had declared her dead were now being questioned by police, and the media storm outside the hospital was uncontrollable. Inside, Emmanuel sat quietly in the waiting room, soaked and shivering, but smiling faintly. He didn't want reward or attention. He only wanted to be sure she was safe. When Amara finally woke up, her first words were barely audible. Where am I?" Her brother rushed to her side, weeping uncontrollably. The doctors assured her she was fine now, but her voice faltered when she asked, "Who saved me?" Keen hesitated, glancing toward the window, where Emmanuel sat outside under a tree, watching the rain. "A man," he said softly. "A homeless man who wouldn't let us bury you." Amara blinked, her eyes moist. "Find him." Later that night, when the hospital was quiet and the rain had stopped, she found Emmanuel sitting under a streetlight across from the building, holding a cup of warm tea someone had given him. She approached slowly, wearing a hospital robe, her head covered. "You saved my life," she said softly. Emmanuel looked up, startled, and quickly tried to stand, but she gestured for him to stay seated. "No one believed me," he replied with a weak smile. "But I saw your fingers twitch. I couldn't let them bury you. Amara sat beside him, silence wrapping around them for a moment. Why did you care so much? You don't even know me. He stared at the ground. Because once, I was you. Amara turned to him, curious. What do you mean? He sighed, eyes lost in memories. I was a CEO too. I built towers, made millions, had everything. Then I trusted the wrong people. Lost everything. My wife, my home, my company. The streets took what was left. But I learned to see things differently. Life has a pulse, even when the world thinks it's gone. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You saw life in me when no one else did. He nodded. Sometimes, it takes someone who's already lost everything to recognize what's still alive. From that day forward, Amara's life changed in ways no one could have imagined. She refused to go back to her glass office in the towers. Instead, she started visiting homeless shelters, sponsoring rehabilitation programs, and funding hospitals. And through it all, Emmanuel remained by her side, not as a beggar, but as a friend and advisor, and the man who reminded her that life itself is the greatest fortune. But as the media began digging deeper into Emmanuel's past, secrets started to surface. Secrets that would shake Amara's empire once again and make her question if fate had truly saved her, or if it was leading her into something far more dangerous. The morning sun spilled softly through the hospital window, painting golden lines across Amara's face. She had been discharged a week ago, but she hadn't gone home to her mansion in Banana Island. Instead, she'd rented a quiet, modest apartment overlooking the lagoon, a place where she could think, far away from the chaos of her empire and the endless questions from the media. Every newspaper headline screamed her story. The billionaire who came back from the dead. Homeless man becomes hero after saving Amara Okafor. Miracle or mystery? The woman who woke up in her own funeral. Emmanuel, however, avoided the spotlight completely. He refused interviews and avoided cameras. When journalists offered him money for his story, he simply walked away. He spent most of his time cleaning the small church down the street, helping the elderly carry groceries, or sitting quietly by the water. But Amara couldn't forget the look in his eyes that day, a strange mix of sorrow and knowing, as if he carried a burden she couldn't see. One evening, she invited him over for dinner. The table was simple, unlike the grand feasts she used to host. Emmanuel sat awkwardly, still unused to clean clothes and warm food. You don't owe me this, he said as she served him. Amara smiled. You saved my life. Let me at least feed you. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. If you insist. They ate mostly in silence until Amara spoke again, her voice soft but curious. Emmanuel, I've tried to look into your past. I couldn't find anything before 10 years ago. It's like you disappeared from the world. Who were you before the streets? He set his fork down, his face shadowed with pain. Some stories are better left buried. Please, she said gently. I need to know. He leaned back, eyes distant. My full name was Emmanuel Yuzo. I owned a construction company, Zenith Structures. We built half the skyline of Victoria Island. I was young, proud, and stupid. I trusted my business partner, a man named Okechukwu. He was brilliant but greedy. He forged documents, stole contracts, and framed me for fraud. I went to prison for 3 years. When I came out, everything was gone. My wife had left. My daughter wouldn't even look at me. I had nothing. Amara's eyes widened. Okechukwu, that name sounds familiar. It should, he said bitterly. He became the CEO of Nady Holdings, the same company that tried to buy out your towers last year. Amara froze. She remembered the hostile takeover attempt that nearly crippled her company. Okechukwu had played it off as just business. But there had always been something ruthless about him, something cold in his smile. Do you think, she began slowly, he had anything to do with what happened to me? Emmanuel looked at her sharply. What do you mean? She hesitated. Before my collapse, I was preparing to expose someone on my board for embezzling funds and leaking our trade secrets to a rival company. I never got the chance to name him. That night, I remember drinking wine during a board dinner. Then everything went dark. A chill ran down Emmanuel's spine. You think you were poisoned? She nodded. I don't think, I know. But the doctors said it was a heart condition. Emmanuel leaned forward. If that's true, Amara, then whoever did this still believes you're supposed to be dead. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the lagoon. That night, long after Emmanuel had left, Amara couldn't sleep. She kept replaying his words. Her company had moved on without her. The acting CEO, her trusted vice chairman, Richard, had been unusually calm about her death. Too calm. He'd handled the funeral arrangements, sold some of her shares, and even signed deals she never approved of. The next morning, Amara disguised herself with a scarf and glasses and went to her company headquarters for the first time since dying. No one recognized her at first. Her security guards had been replaced. Her portraits had been taken down. When she tried to enter her own office, a new secretary stopped her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, this floor is restricted to executives only." Amara smiled faintly. "Then tell Richard that his ghost is here to see him." The woman froze. Seconds later, Richard stepped out, pale as chalk. "Amara?" She walked past him and into her office, the heels of her shoes echoing like thunderclaps. "You look surprised to see me alive," she said coldly. Richard swallowed hard. I thought you were gone. I handled everything in your absence." "I noticed," she said, glancing at the new contracts on her desk. "Selling off our assets? Laying off staff? Partnering with Okechukwu company." Richard's voice trembled. "It was a business decision." "Or a betrayal?" she cut in. "You were working with him, weren't you?" He didn't answer. His silence was louder than words. That evening, Amara met Emmanuel again by the water. She told him everything. He listened quietly, then said, "You can't fight them directly. They have money, influence, and connections. You'll need proof." "Then we'll get proof," she said firmly. Emmanuel nodded, his eyes burning with something fierce and familiar. "Then it's time the world learned the truth, not just about what they did to you, but what they did to me." Unbeknownst to both of them, someone was watching from a distance, a man in a black car with tinted windows, speaking into a phone. "She knows," the man whispered. "And she's with him." A deep voice replied from the other end, cold and slow. "Then we finish what we started." The night swallowed the car as it drove away, and the quiet waves of the lagoon reflected the city lights. Beautiful, deceptive, and dangerous. Would you like me to continue the story from here, where the danger begins and the enemies start closing in on Amara and Emmanuel? The next few days felt like walking through a minefield. Amara and Emmanuel moved cautiously, speaking to no one they didn't trust. Every sound seemed suspicious, every shadow felt like an eye watching them. Yet beneath the fear was a shared determination. Two souls bound by fate and betrayal, both brought back from the ashes. Amara began secretly investigating her own company. Late at night, she would sneak into the building using a hidden staff entrance Emmanuel had shown her, a maintenance shaft no one else remembered. Emmanuel, who still had old contacts in the city's underworld, helped her gather information quietly. One of his friends, a former IT technician, managed to hack into Nady Holdings' server and discovered shocking evidence. Encrypted files showing millions transferred from Amara's company to Okechukwu's hidden accounts abroad. The files were labeled under Richard's authorization. When Amara saw it, her heart pounded. "He really did it," she whispered. "He tried to kill me, steal everything, and merge my company under Okechukwu's control." Emmanuel's face hardened. "They didn't just want your company, Amara. They wanted to erase you." A sudden knock on the apartment door made them freeze. Emmanuel motioned for silence. The knock came again, louder this time. Amara's eyes darted to the window. Who could that be? Emmanuel peered through the peephole. His jaw clenched. "Police." "What?" she whispered. A voice shouted. "Open up. Lagos State Police. We have a warrant." Emmanuel turned to her. "They found out we know." Before they could move, the door burst open. Officers swarmed in, guns drawn. Emmanuel raised his hands as two of them grabbed Amara. "You're under arrest for fraud and attempted murder," one officer barked. "Fraud!" Amara cried. "This is insane. I'm the victim here." But her protests fell on deaf ears. Within minutes, they were handcuffed and thrown into a police van. Emmanuel caught her eyes just before the doors slammed shut. "Stay calm," he said softly. "They're framing us." At the station, the accusations were absurd. Documents had surfaced allegedly showing that Amara transferred company funds to Emmanuel's account to stage her own death. The signatures were forgeries, but convincing ones. Richard and Okechukwu had done their homework. Days passed behind bars. Amara's lawyers tried to intervene, but even the courts seemed compromised. Okechukwu's influence was everywhere, from politicians to police chiefs. One night, in the damp silence of their separate cells, Emmanuel whispered through the bars, "Do you trust me, Amara?" She answered without hesitation, "With my life." He smiled faintly. "Good. Because I have a plan." The next morning, As the guards brought their breakfast, Emmanuel faked a seizure, collapsing violently to the ground. The officers panicked and opened the cell door. In the confusion, Amara used the keys one of them dropped to unlock her cell. Within seconds, Emmanuel was back on his feet, pulling her by the hand. "Run," he said simply. They dashed through the narrow corridors, alarms blaring behind them. Emmanuel knew every back route, every side alley, every forgotten gate. They burst into the open air, disappearing into the crowded streets of Lagos before the police could organize. For 3 days, they hid in Makoko, the floating slum. The people there knew Emmanuel and offered them shelter. At night, under the moonlight, he worked tirelessly on an old laptop, trying to decrypt the stolen files that could prove their innocence. Finally, one night, he cracked the code. Inside were recordings, voice messages between Richard and Okechukwu. Amara listened, trembling as the truth unfolded. Okachukwu's voice was unmistakable. "Once she's gone, merge the company quietly. Make it look like a natural succession. Her brother will sign off once he sees the documents. And for the homeless man, if he gets in the way, eliminate him too." Her eyes filled with tears. They planned everything. Emmanuel's hand tightened on hers. Now we have them. They couldn't go to the police, not yet. But they could go to the media. Amara still had one loyal contact left, a reporter named Nena, who had always admired her. Using a burner phone, they arranged a secret meeting at midnight in an abandoned printing press near Yaba. When Nena arrived, she was shocked to see Amara alive. "By heaven, it's true. You're alive?" Amara nodded. "And I need your help to show the world the truth." They gave her the recordings, the documents, and photos. Nena promised to release everything the next morning. But as they left the building, a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of them. Men in suits jumped out, guns drawn. Okechukwu himself stepped out of the car, smiling coldly. "You should have stayed dead, Amara." Emmanuel moved in front of her. "You poisoned her, stole her company, and destroyed my life. It ends tonight." Okechukwu laughed. "And what will you do, beggar? Preach me to death." But before he could draw his weapon, Emmanuel swung a rusted pipe from the ground, striking one of the guards. Chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out. Amara screamed as Emmanuel pushed her behind a car. One of the bullets grazed his arm, but he didn't stop fighting. Sirens wailed in the distance. Nena had called the police. For the first time, it was them who ran. Okechukwu tried to flee, but Emmanuel tackled him to the ground, punching until the man dropped his gun. When the police arrived, they found Okechukwu and his men subdued, their weapons confiscated, and the evidence already in Nena's hands. The news broke at dawn. Billionaire poison plot exposed. Amara Okafor alive, mastermind arrested. The entire nation erupted in shock. Richard and Okechukwu were arrested and charged with conspiracy, attempted murder, and fraud. Weeks later, Amara stood before the press again, but this time not as the Queen of Towers, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a woman reborn. She announced that she was donating half her fortune to build rehabilitation centers for the homeless and hospitals for those in need. When reporters asked about Emmanuel, she smiled softly. "He's not just the man who saved my life. He's the man who reminded me what life truly means." Emmanuel refused fame, as always. He preferred to stay in the background, helping quietly. But one evening, as the sun set over the lagoon, Amara found him sitting by the water, the same spot where it all began. She sat beside him. "You could have died for me," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Maybe I did once. But this time I lived for something worth dying for." Tears filled her eyes. "What will you do now?" He looked out over the golden reflection of the skyline, the towers she once built, now standing tall again. "Maybe build something new," he said softly. "Not from concrete or steel, but from second chances." They sat there as the wind carried the sounds of the city, laughter, traffic, life. Neither spoke again for a long while. But they didn't need to. Two souls once broken, now whole. A billionaire who learned the meaning of humility, and a homeless man who rediscovered hope. And the moral whispered through the calm night air. Never bury a heart that still believes, nor underestimate the hands that reach from the shadows. For sometimes salvation wears rags and miracles come from the forgotten.